Okay, here's a couple harder problems that I'll add to the previous video solutions for the 3.3 practice 2 video solutions. So just look at a couple of these here real quick. If we're going to, on this one, we're supposed to solve by completing the square. So let's do that. So if we've got something like this, let's gather the x terms on the left side, leave a space. And now we've got to, before we go any further, we've got to divide everything through by 5 because we need the coefficient of x squared to be 1. So that's going to give us the equation x squared minus 1/5 x space equals -8/5. And so half of -1/5 is -1/5 times 1/2, which is -1/10, which means I need to add to both sides -1/10 squared, which is 1/100th. So what's that going to leave me with on this other side? Well, -8/5 plus 1/100th. If I multiply top and bottom by 20 to get 100 on the bottom, I'm going to get -160 plus 1 is -159 on the top over my common denominator of 100. And so then all I've got to do is isolate x. So to isolate x, I'm going to square root both sides, which is going to give me what? That's going to give me x minus 1/10 equals plus or minus the square root of -159 1/100ths. So I can do a couple things with that. The square root of 159, I believe I'm just going to be stuck with. Yep. So that's going to give me, and then the negative becomes an I. But the square root of 100 becomes a 10. And so when I add 1/10 to both sides, I just get the solutions. X equals, we'll put the 1/10, in front of the plus or minus. So 1/10 plus or minus square root of 159 over 10 times I. So I get that solution, and same thing if I change the plus to a minus. Okay, there they are. Let's try one more of those, one more difficult one. How about something like this? Okay, this looks pretty bad, but really all I've got to do to clear the fractions here is just multiply each side through by 4, the least common multiple of all the denominators. What's that going to give me? On the left side, actually, I really won't do that. What am I doing? I've already got the x squared by itself. So I'm really just going to collect terms here. So unfortunately, I can't really clear the fractions. It's not going to do me any good. So we'll subtract 1/4 x from both sides. And that's going to give me 3/2 x minus 1/4 x. So on the left side, so that's going to be x squared. 3/2 is the same as 6/4 minus 1/4 is 5/4. And then when I add the 3/4 to both sides, so I get all that stuff to go away. The 1/2 plus the 3/4 is going to be 2/4 plus 3/4 is 5/4. Okay, so now we'll gather the x terms on one side, leave a space, and we'll push the other stuff to the other side. So we'll push the negative 5/4 to the other side. So when I complete the square, I get x plus half of 5/4 is 5/8, which means I need to add to both sides 5/8 squared, which is 25/64, which leaves us with what on this other side? So if I multiply top and bottom here by 16 to get 64ths, we're going to get negative 5 times 16 plus 25 over common denominator of 64. So that's negative 80 plus 25 is negative 55. Did I do all that right? I'm hoping I did. Multiply by 16 or 16. So yeah, that looks good. Okay? Whoops, and that's over 64. Okay? So now I isolate the square, or excuse me, I isolate x by first square rooting both sides. I've got a negative there, so it's going to give me an I. And so I get x plus 5/8 equals plus or minus the square root of 55, which does not simplify, over the square root of 64, which is 8. And then the negative inside the radical becomes an I outside the radical. So all I have to do is add negative 5/8 to both sides. So x equals negative 5/8 plus or minus the square root of 55 over 8 times I. And so we end up with negative 5/8 plus square root 55 over 8 times I, and same thing with a minus sign. Okay, got it. The discriminant, we already took care of those in the last solution set. Let's go down and look at a couple of hard quadratic formula problems, like how about this one? I've already done some quadratic formula questions also. Let's do a couple harder ones. So here, all we really want to do is put this into standard form and then apply the quadratic formula. But it'd be much more convenient to get rid of the fractions. So let's multiply through both sides by the least common multiple of all the denominators, which is 6. So 6 over 3 is 2 times 1, so I end up with, that's going to make this first term a negative 2x squared. 6 over 6 cancels, so I just get minus 7x equals 6 over 2 is 3 times 1 is 3x squared. And then 6 times 1/6 is 1. So how about if we push everything, we want to make the coefficient of x squared positive, so we'll push everything to the right side. So we'll add 2x squared to both sides, add 7x to both sides, and that's going to give us what? Over here we're going to be stuck with 3x squared plus 2x squared is 5x squared plus 7x plus 1, and on the other side we get 0, but let's put that on the right instead, just to make it a little more convenient. So now we can just apply the quadratic formula. So we see here that a is 5, b is 7, c is 1, and so we just get x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c divided by 2 times a, it's 10. And so what's that give us then? Negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 49 minus 20 is square root of 29 over 10. So those are our two answers right there. Negative 7/10 There we go. Okay, so negative 7/10 plus square root 29 over 10 and same thing with a minus sign. Okay, and then let's just see if this one is worth doing. Well, let's do one more. Call her good. So then if we collect all the like terms on one side, so we'll subtract 5x squared from both sides, which is going to give us on the left side 10x squared minus 5x squared is 5x squared. We'll add x to both sides, which gives us 2x on the left, and we'll subtract 4, which gives us minus 9 on the left. So now we chased everything from the left over to the right. So this tells us A is 5, B is 2, C is negative 9, and so the quadratic formula yields x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared, 2 squared is 4, minus 4 times 5 times negative 9. So we'll change the product to positive, divided by 10, 2 times a. So we get x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 plus 20 times 9 is 180. So 184, all divided by 10. Well, does anything go into 184? 4 does not. 9 does not. So 16 can't. So 36 can't. 47 should it? I mean 49, sorry. Nope. I think we're stuck with square root. What? It seems like that ought to simplify, but it doesn't. Oh, 4 does. What am I saying? Yeah, 4 does go into that. So we can just make that square root of 4, which is 2, and what's left over? 4 goes into that 46 times. All right, yeah. Okay. And so if I split this apart, if I split this apart, then I end up with negative 2/10 plus or minus 2 radical 46 over 10, which allows me to reduce that to a 1/5 and a 1/5. And so my final answers should look like negative 1/5 plus square root 46 over 5 and same thing with a minus sign. Okay, and that's it. I think that's probably good. The rest of them were, yeah, we did stuff like that. Okay, we're done.